Welcome to Crossing Darkness, a podcast about tabletop role-playing games with a focus on the world of darkness. We broadcast over Twitch every Sunday at 7 p.m. Central Time and are open to answering questions from chat during the show. I'm your host, Frozen Fallout. My co-host is Motor Rory, who helped me create this podcast as well as a 40-person, four-table Gen Con event.
Hey, Josh. And hi, everyone. This is Season 3, Episode 9. Today we have special guest Charles Ashe, storyteller for Blood Coven, a Vampire the Masquerade game, and writer of A Ghoul's Tale, available on the Storyteller's Vault. Charles, how have these dark, cold nights been treating you?
Well, they're dark and they're cold, and if you're a World of Darkness fan, that's probably optimal, so can't complain, really.
Yeah, definitely a great type of weather and time for vampires. I have to say that I live in Wisconsin, so winter is like, I don't know, we get like what, 12 hours of daylight maybe?
I think it's less now. It's
Yeah.
less at some point.
In Phoenix, it's more like if you get an hour of daylight in the summer, you're already a pile of ash. If you're just a little immortal. Like last week when we had the storms, or if you had the storm, Facebooking, wow, it's raining, it's dark, it's cold, I love it, and then the sun came, it was all blue, and I'm like, oh, this is so depressing.
Yeah, so Charles, tell us a little bit about some of the stuff that you've been doing. Looks like you do some stuff for storytelling for Blood Coven. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
That's actually, I started that game back in August of 1994, and it's been through several rotations of several tables of players since then. But it's the situation where I just never stopped telling the story and never stopped writing it down. So I just compounded it over and over and over again. So it's something I started when I'm 19 and something I'm still doing at 47. And it tries to be a dark and atmospheric game. It tries to be something complex but accessible to even a casual player.
So is this like a continuation that is it a like massive campaign that you've been running, or is it something that you've been doing like rewrites on?
Well, most of it's my work. It's a long-going chronicle. It's all one chronicle. I crossed over a few games here and there, but it's almost 90. That was what. So
I'm sorry, you cut out there a little bit. You said that mainly vampire.
yeah, it's mainly vampire. I'd say it's like 95% vampire total. You know, like I occasionally go over here and do a mage storyline. I might go over here and do a werewolf storyline, but I'm 95% Vampire the Masquerade all the way through.
Awesome. Yeah. So you've got this. So how many years has that been running then?
27 years. We have a timeline that, as of this week, is 97 pages long.
Wow. What's the start date for that?
August of 1994. I don't think I have the exact day, but
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's awesome. So, and then it's present day for the Chronicle? It's all the way caught up to 2000 or
kind of
2021.
like sort of. We do modern day stuff. I think my co-storyteller, I brought him on a couple of years ago to start adding stuff on his own when I was on hiatus. It's mainly just we hop around through time and space. You know, we do France 1492 over here. We do 1100s with the formation of the Khmer over here, and we just jump back and forth. But it creates one coherent chronological.
Interesting. Cool. So you kind of have like a campaign that you'll be running something in the 90s, and then, you'll jump back and say, let's do something in the past and kind of flush out more of what happened in your world in this specific time period, in this specific event or place.
Pretty much, yeah. Like, yeah, I'll look at the storyteller and the other players and say, okay, well, we just did 1990s werewolf. Let's head back and do 1600s vampire and see what's happening in New Orleans. And a lot of that stuff, we'll have stuff that crosses over an item or an entity or a through line that shows it's connected to everything else. It's just a cameo, but it ties.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. That is really impressive, I have to say. I've not heard of somebody being able to have one chronicle that they've been building since like the beginning, and that's pretty epic.
It's really just me being a stubborn shit, to be honest with you. And I just kept using the same notes and kept adding to notes. It was just as simple as don't stop playing, write everything down, red slather to it. But I owe it all to the players too, the competent players who really invest themselves into it and put pieces themselves into the story, because it's as much their creation as it is mine.
Are some of your players people that have been around since all the way from the beginning, or has it been swapping people out a lot?
I have people. My current group have had around mostly for about 8 or 9. The original groups have all, graduated college, went off, got married, moved across the country. I touch base them from time to time, but they don't really have the energy or the time commitment to a chronicle at this point. I might run a one shot for them if I get scattered to the forward, but they're still aware of the timeline, still aware.
Cool. Have you recorded any of this, or is there any kind of online presence of the chronicle?
But I talked to my co-storyteller just last night because we played. I played in his game last night, and I said, it'd be great if we could podcast this ourselves. It'd be great if we could record this ourselves. It'd be great stuff that we. And he just kind of rolled his eyes and smiled at me and said, I don't know about that. So I'm kind of working on hopefully getting something like that started in the future. I had the double storyteller I was going
to. Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's only recorded on the timeline now. So.
Yeah, I think I've had this conversation with Josh a bunch of times where, I've got my regular gaming group that we've been together for almost 20 years now since we started college. And every time somebody brings up, recording and broadcasting, everybody's like, no, that's not who we are. And it wasn't until I met Josh here and we started our Technogate show that it's like we've actually got something online. But yeah, a lot of groups aren't comfortable with it, and honestly, I'm very sympathetic to that, because once you start broadcasting, it changes the nature of the game.
I believe it. I mean, I'm an advocate that any game you ever run, write it down somehow and keep it. So, like in 20 years, you can show your friends and say, "Hey, do you remember this?" Having that souvenir for the game for everybody's participation, I think highly enough of that. I would love to get into the recording thing, but it really depends on how it goes.
Yeah, I would say that one of the big things is if you're, you don't need to broadcast or to, put it on Twitch or, even store it anywhere that's publicly available. But recording in this day and age has gotten so much easier, especially if you're playing over the internet with people and you have Discord or something. Recording becomes so much easier, at least on the voice level. But even if you're at home, and you've got a table, you get one of these, podcasting mics that, kind of allows you to pick up the whole room, put that in the center of the table, and you pretty much have, the same kind of quality to a certain degree. And you can, I'm really fascinated with the idea of being able to preserve all of my chronicles moving forward, at least in a recording kind of format, because it'll allow me to go back and check out games and relive and understand what's going on in my games a lot better than just taking notes.
Absolutely. I mean, I spent some time in the theater before I really started to focus on writing. So I got this slight performance bug. I do voices, I do inflections, characters. So I would love to have those records going forward. Like, here's what I did for my group. This is how far I went as a storyteller trying to. And then some of them do some great performances themselves for certain moments of RP, some really outstanding. I think, well, I can put that in print, but nobody's going to ever know how well it really played out as a scene. Didn't record it. Hopefully one day I'll win that battle, but for now I'm just kind of in the backseat.
Yeah, I would say that the first step, if you can't get them to want to broadcast and stuff, is at least get them to the idea of, hey, do you mind if I at least record this? So that I have a keepsake of it, like you said. And yeah, it's definitely really, really interesting that how easy it's become. Because I remember when I was first storytelling in my teenage years back in the early 2000s. We were trying to figure out a way to record it, and we were getting like a tape recorder and kind of one of those old had like a tape and stuff you had to put inside of it with actual tape that you could rip out.
Magnetic tape.
And it was horrible. It was horrible to listen to. Now my phone, I can just put that onto a table and that records just as just fine. You definitely want better if you're trying to get it, if you want to publish it and stuff like that. But your phone, just for keeping recordings of what's going on in your games can be easily done if you're doing it in person. And of course, the internet is, when you're online, it's super easy just to get any kind of recording OBS software.
When I first started this storytelling back in '93, all we had was IRC, and the internet as we knew it today didn't exist at all. It was there, but it was definitely not this. And the strides that they've made to make this the people's voice, make the internet something that everybody can sound off on. It's not something people should pass up if they take advantage of it. Record your good times for the world. By God, do it.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So what are some of the other projects that you work on? Do you do anything with like conventions or anything?
I have a table with my friend Aurora O'Brien, who did the cover for Lady Dusk, by the way, Ghoul's Tale. That was her. We share a table over at Phoenix Comic Con, also known as Phoenix Fan Fusion. Great, say that six. And we do that every year, except for obviously the COVID winter that we're. And we do cooperations between ourselves from time to time. I'll write something, I do the artwork for it. We do a little collaboration.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, so but you don't run like an actual event. You just have like a booth there, or
Yeah, we're kind of part of the event. We're in the Merchants Row. We're all there off to the side, peddling our wares and hoping for the best. But running events, running organizations, I haven't done that.
yeah, it's just I always find it interesting, like because we go to a lot of conventions, and I just don't see a lot of presence of the World of Darkness at like Gen Con. Um, for tabletop role playing games. There's a lot of like one shot LARPs and stuff like that, but there's a very low amount of GMs running stuff for Gen Con. And I always wonder, um, what other conventions are out there that people are doing. So
Yeah, it used to be, they used to have gaming conventions. There weren't any other kind of convention but gaming, at least locally. We did that. And I was recruited into Vampire the very first time at a big World of Darkness that they were doing there. I was lured in by a kindly player. I've been doing it ever since. They should have hopefully some kind of presence at most, but now it's the Comic Con experience. The gaming experience is one little channel off to the side compared to all the other.
yeah, yeah, the gaming comes secondary a lot of the times at conventions these days to the actual other events that are taking place.
Like the last few fan fusions I was at, last 3 or 4, I didn't even know if they had gaming at all. I didn't hear about it from anybody, so I really didn't know if it's there.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's a big difference between the comic/fan conventions versus like a legit gaming convention. It's very different.
And the best thing about the gaming conventions the old days is you just went out and found a game day or night, and rather than trying to find a little pocket that they put you into for these larger. There's this little game room in one of the hotels in the acres and acres and acres that they're holding Comic Con. Well, I guess that'll be.
Yeah, I don't see people in the comic and fandom industry really getting into gaming as much. But
not like
I mean, with the rise of Critical Role and some of the other big channels, I do see that happening a little bit more. Are there any actual plays that you follow online?
I have followed Critical Role before. My friend Alex, she goes to a number of them these days. I think she's in Vancouver adjacent now. She goes by the name of Redhead Vixen. He's great to watch.
Yeah, I think I saw that linked on your Facebook, and I was wondering, oh, is he in this show? But you just know one of the cast members?
I know one of the cast members. I would love to do a show like that for Vampire the World of Darkness, which is why I started my YouTube channel. But it got derailed, and I'm still looking at possibly doing that. I would love to be able to put like an entire chronicle online. My bucket list ambition.
Yeah. Have you ever thought of typing something up for the Storyteller's Vault, like a source book for your like even just a part of your chronicle?
I thought about that, and the players have urged me to do that. And even before the Storyteller's Vault became a thing, they said, "Chris, write this stuff down, turn it into books." And I'm like, that's probably not a good idea. We don't have the rights for that. We don't want to, publish anybody's. I mean, sure, we could do it by the Storyteller's Vault, but it becomes reading somebody else's game, which can be either really exciting or crash and bored, depending on what you're.
Have you ever thought about
So it's
doing
all,
like modules based on your campaign like setting? Because I think that that's one of the things that I would like to see more of in the Storyteller's Vault is more, especially for Mage the Ascension, but also for Vampire the Masquerade and other games as well, having like a module that's based in somebody's, campaign setting, and then you could sell the campaign setting book for it on Storyteller's Vault, but you'd also have, one-shot modules or multiple, a set of modules that you could sell as well.
that's not a bad idea. I mean, I should talk that over with my group because they own the characters basically. They participate in my. I can't. I'd feel without their permission. I'm sure they'd give it, but I wouldn't want to do it alone. Like, hey guys, what do you think of this? How do we structure this? Where do you want this to come in? So it wouldn't be a solo effort. I do like the idea.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely something that you'd want to get your whole group involved in if you did, for sure.
Absolutely, or at least the ones who are still participating.
Have you guys been actually playing during pandemic?
It's been off and on. Like, it depends on where the numbers are. If we're comfortable with the numbers, we'll put on our masks. We'll go and do our game, keep social distance. Like the one our session last week was outside among a fire pit, and then this week it was inside, but we were all masked and doing the right thing, I guess. It's been
Yeah.
very nerve wracking because you can't really focus on the game because you're also wondering how close you need to get to everybody, and that's always in the back of your mind as well. But it's also everybody's going mad. We're all going stir crazy, crouched in our rooms for a year. You got to get out and do something somehow. Put on your mask, wash your hands, and hope for the best.
Yeah. Is the playstyle of your group not conducive to online play, or is that not something you guys have looked into?
It depends on what the audience looking for the online play would be looking for, because we don't really do an action heavy chronicle. In fact, I've done
Oh,
several
I think
nights in
I
a
just
row where
meant
there's no action.
rather than gathering in person, like doing it over like
like
Discord or
digitally.
something.
I'd
Is
have to poll them about that because I know my co-storyteller doesn't like the idea. He likes having everyone with him so he can socially interact with him face to face.
yeah,
But I
no,
could ask him. See what
it's definitely harder to game with people just hearing their voices, or even if you've got video, doing it online. It's
A different experience for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, it does change. I mean, if I did, I'd prefer to do it with cameras. If possible, I would record it without if need be, but I have to check with them and really see where with it. I would love to do it though.
Yeah, definitely. Well, what can you tell us about some of the like epic things or some of the stuff that's been going on in your chronicles? Like, what do you focus on, like the Camarilla mostly, or are you do like a jumping around on all different types of stuff and try and hit up all the different aspects of vampire?
Well, when we first started for the first couple of years, it was just basic Camarilla Chronicle. It was, second edition days. We didn't have that much info about the Sabbat, so that was my fault. About 1996, I decided I wanted to follow a group of Toreador through the ages, so we started a chronicle in 1492 following a bloodline of Toreador, and eventually their descendants as well. So a good chunk of the timeline became this one bloodline of Toreador going between sects and largely being independent. We have like a family tree of all the players who've been embraced into that Toreador bloodline. Now we're branching out to other clans to give them the same depth. So it's kind of slowly been. I can't say it's like Camarilla or Sabbat specific. It's whatever that table at the time happens to be.
Yeah, so you kind of changed it up from time to time based upon. So it sounds like you have like shorter runs that you kind of do. So how many game sessions would you normally do with the same time and the same characters?
I can say I'm definitely a fan of shorter arcs these days because you just try to go on and on and on and on. Eventually, it's going to fall apart just from sheer entropy.
Mhm.
I like doing chronicles that are like maybe 5 to 10 sessions tops, and then we can change gears and do something else, and come back to those characters at the point. So I'm definitely a fan of having a definitive story arc that has a beginning, middle, and end, and then runs only for say 5 to 10 arcs or 5 to 10 episodes, and you're good.
Wow, interesting. That's a very I like that idea, and actually that would be something that I think would be really conducive um to being a show or something like that, because I feel like there are a lot of actual plays that are out there right now where it's like, okay, if you didn't check in with us at season 1, at the very beginning of this, we're on season 25 right now. You should go back and you have to check out everything in order to really understand what's going on right now, because we have this huge arc that's going on. But it would be
Right.
really
There's
interesting to
something.
have like something where it would be a lot of little things. It teaches you about your world, of course, but I feel like you'd be able to drop in and kind of be able to see one little arc of 10 episodes or 8 episodes. That'd be really easy to kind of watch or listen to.
I would love to do that actually, because it would compress everything into a time frame that people can find manageable and still tell an ongoing story over a long term that really fits together like Lego bricks. That
Absolutely,
would
yeah.
It would be really hard though. There's a lot of actual plays out there right now.
Yeah,
There
it's
are
booming
just
right now,
so many.
Yeah.
which only makes me want to do it more because everybody else is doing it.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
didn't
sometimes
discourage
it's
me
not
from
about being, oh, I'm the only one that wants to do this and I need all the attention for doing it. It's like, this is just kind of cool. It's I
right,
want
just
to
to
do
do
that.
something fun that's modern. Put your game out there.
Yeah. Yeah, so you have like a lot of focus in the beginning on the Toreador. What did you do with the like other worlds as you started, as I'm guessing you started adding them in later? Did you have like an idea of that there were werewolves and vampires and mages all together in the beginning, or is it your world, started off very vampire centric and you've slowly added those in? And if so, how did you add those in?
Well, I should preface this by saying, retrospectively, 19-year-old, I thought they all went together and they were all supposed to go together. And by the time I started this game, Werewolf just went into second edition. The second edition book for Werewolf is one of my favorite books, White Wolf, by the way. But these things were out there, and I thought they had to be merged together, and this is what people were expecting. It was the MCU shared universe for the MCU. And as an adult now, as somebody who's farther along, I would never have done that. I would have kept it strictly vampire. I would have had a completely different approach to mages and lupines. But there it is, and I put it in the timeline. I hammered it down with these players playing these characters, and I didn't want to short sell them. So I just kind of brought it in and said, well, they aren't a focus, but if I have a backdoor to bring them in and have a cameo or have a meaningful brief arc, that's okay. But I try to keep it strictly vampire for the most part these days. Crossover can go wrong any number of thousand ways, and maybe 2 or 3 ways it can go right. So it has to be carefully managed, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have like a list of all of your like primary characters, your movers and shakers inside of your world? And does that include like a lot of the other World of Darkness characters?
I've been meaning to put something together like that for years, and it keeps intimidating me enough to just sit down and sit on my hands. One of these days I'll get around to that, some kind of grand index. We had one player create a family tree of all the connected Toreador, and that's the closest we've come to having like an actual bibliography of who's who and where's where.
Yeah, I really like the idea of building family trees. I've done that for the Malkavians. I had a Malkavian character that I was playing that I went back and was like, okay, I'm gonna find out who my sire's sire is and who, I'll go all the way back as far as I possibly can, because it's kind of, I mean, to a certain degree, I feel like if you get introduced properly as a vampire, that lineage should be kind of known to you and kind of prided
Absolutely.
to a certain degree. Because I mean, if you really think about it, 13 generations back is, if you're 8th generation, it's a lot easier. But I mean, even at 13, that's not that far away.
Right. You're only memorizing 13 people. That's not that difficult.
Right. You'd think that that would be something that would be taught to you, down the line to a certain degree, depending on what's, kind of going on. I always imagine that the farther back you go, the more likely that you're going to have some kind of famous quote unquote, ancestor.
Yeah, my co-storyteller and I, we sat down just a couple of years ago and plotted out all the blanks in the Toreador bloodline, so we know who we came from all the way from present. And whenever we have a chance, we try to introduce a new player to the bloodline as a character in the bloodline. So players embrace players every chance we get. Somebody might have a sire from 1996, from back when I was 22 years old, who hasn't played the game in 10 to 15 years, actively part of their bloodline continuity, which is really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So is this mainly tabletop or is this mainly LARP?
Well, it's all tabletop. I've done my time in LARP communities. I was a domain storyteller for the Camarilla org at the turn of the century. I'm not going to slam anybody's good time, but I learned to steer away from LARPs.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, definitely. It's a different experience for sure. From tabletop to LARP is so much different.
I mean, it looks so good on paper. It seems like such a good concept, but in execution, the less I say about that, the better. That's a completely different podcast.
Yeah, so you do almost all of your stuff tabletop. What's the player sizes that you kind of get up to?
The very first time I did this, when I was 19 and putting it all together, I took players from multiple campuses, junior college campuses, and I ended up about 16 or 17 tabletop players before LARPing. This was not a smart thing. This was a really, really stupid thing for me to do. I kept it going for a few months, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't. So these days, I just do my optimal group size is 2 or 3 players only. And I'll go larger if I'm asked to, if there's really a press for it, but I usually don't like to go any larger than 4 or 5. But 3 is my optimal.
Yeah, I found 3 is a very solid number for World of Darkness. Like 4 is like a very solid group for Dungeons and Dragons, and I feel like 3 is what World of Darkness was kind of tabletop was really built around the concept of having 3 players. And not having to have 3, I need a warrior, a paladin, and a warrior, a thief, and a
right,
cleric or whatever. But you want to have personalities that are going to have fun times role playing with each other. So as a tabletopper though, are you focused a lot on the mechanics, or is your games a lot of like role play that you focus on?
Oh, it's 95% role play. I mean, at this point in my age, I'm losing rules from my mind. They're slipping out with old age. I keep asking for roles that aren't on the character sheet anymore because they changed the character sheets. That gets embarrassing. But they change it so much. Oh, there's no more technology. What? There's no selection. There's subterfuge. But I kind of wing it off the sheets these days and just go with the basics of knowledge. And I focus mostly on the role playing and the storyline overall, which is, I think, the storyteller's job is to focus on that more than the rules. The rules can serve and you should be consistent, but they're called storyteller games for a reason. It's not because you're playing chess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not. You do a lot more of the focus on politics and talking and introducing. Do you do a lot of combat scenes though, or is that something that you try to avoid primarily?
Well, we focus mostly on RP and character relationships. With politics, it's like a third place concern. Action sequences and fight sequences almost never surface. They do, but very, very rarely. So it's almost all RP and character.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely. And that's something that I mean, that's the strengths of the World of Darkness. I feel like if you've gone through a game of the World of Darkness and you haven't thrown a punch or done any combat whatsoever, it's you likely had a really great game still. Whereas if you play Dungeons and Dragons, it feels like if you didn't kill a monster, I don't know, what did you do?
Why'd you show up? Yeah, why did you roll out of bed for this game today? Yeah,
did I get any experience?
Yeah, right. Do I get experience for eating a pizza? But I've had that problem with Werewolf because Werewolf is by design supposed to be more of an action game, and it's counterintuitive to my instincts as a storyteller. So I'm still grappling Werewolf to a right place.
I feel like Werewolf can be like just a focus on combat, but I also, if you look at the rituals, the whole I feel like politics is where Werewolf is really at, with a very weird take on politics, a very tribal.
I agree with that.
There is combat, but I've always been a person. I feel like there's some storytellers that are like, with Werewolf, all the challenges all need to be physical. It's all about, can this guy beat the crap out of this other person, with a lot of the base challenges. But I always feel like there's room for well, I'm not going to physically challenge you, but I want to challenge you in a game of wits, or a duel of, who can catch, this fawn or whatever that we're gonna go hunt down, or
right.
Different kind of challenges that you could kind of do. But in the base, in general though, there's just all these different rituals. There's all these different kind of etiquette for how to do things and how things are done in the Werewolf Society. Where if you're part of a cairn, yes, yep.
They've meticulously created this werewolf culture and all of its flaws, and it's heavily flawed. I'm going to tick off some werewolf players here. But some of the favorite games that I would like to do is show just how fucked up Garu society actually is. They're arrogant enough to think that they're perfect and they're ideal, but there's so many signs about how messed up they really are that I think a lot of people gloss over because, werewolves first, go team werewolves.
I completely agree with you. I feel that werewolves are they're monsters still, and they still and you should still have to deal with that aspect that you are a monster. It's and that you have this rage inside of you, this worm taint inside of you, and they try and kind of shove it off as being like, oh, that was given to us by Gaia or whatever. But I mean, that's still like there's a thing inside of a werewolf that is dangerous to humanity in general and can be
It's exactly like having the Hulk. It's being the Incredible Hulk, but 4 or 5 of you and you have claws.
Right. But yeah, there's so much of aspects of the werewolf society, especially I think the aspects of the combat. The alphas are all strength based kind of stuff.
Right.
Is an aspect that I retcon and change myself, but I think generally that is the game. The concept that is one of their flaws as a werewolf society is that they are very short-lived creatures that value strength over wisdom
and pride over everything else. They're a very egocentric culture, and that's basically what killed them. Werewolves didn't have to be defeated by the worm. They've been defeating themselves for centuries, and they're too arrogant to realize the flaws in their own parody.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, they completely disregard a lot of their flaws or sweep that underneath the rug as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and they should have been fighting the Weaver the whole time.
Yeah, apparently. I mean, the same thing happened with Mage the Ascension, how they were focused on the technocracy. And then over the last 5 to 10 years, even per Phil Brucado, turns out the real enemy was in Nefandi all along. And, it changed with the times. The Nefandi are really the big bad guys.
No, I completely agree. That's one of the big things that I do with the Nefandi in any of my Mage games is I always make it so that the Nefandi have, they didn't get knocked out because I believe there was like a whole thing in World War II or just after World War II that they kicked out all of the quote unquote, Nefandi from this realm and banished them. And I love the idea that, no, they just, that was just all the peons, all the people that were really Nefandi are a part of the technocracy, are part of the traditions. They're not an independent group. That's not how the Nefandi roll. They roll with corruption, So, yeah, you might have some devil worshiping, crazy Nefandi going around slaughtering people, but more than likely your boss is probably the Nefandi. You're probably a Nefandi, and you don't even fucking know it because that's how the Nefandi roll,
Right. I mean, the typification is that Nefandi are going to be vastly powerful, vastly rich, super wizards with, an army of nobodies at their beck and call. What if it's actually just a zit-faced grocer at Walmart who's making $8 an hour, and his night job, they're ordinary and they're plain. That's why they're hidden.
Yeah. No, yeah, and it's always about the idea of if you get control of let's say you're part of a tradition, you're part of a chantry, and you're a Nefandi and you corrupt the leader of that chantry. Now pretty much everybody underneath him are at your control as well. They just don't know that they're all agents of the Nefandi now.
Nefandi should be as subtle as you can possibly make them. They shouldn't be theatrical. They should be subtle. They should be plain. Even the rich and powerful ones should actually have an ordinary aspect of them that makes them blend into the rest of the world. That's the threat.
Yeah, and I think that if you do want to have a flashy Nefandi, that's the distraction. That's the red herring. Yeah. That's the thing that is obvious. Obviously, that's the Nefandi we should go after because something else is going to be going on while we are taking that down. That's kind of how
I interpret that the Nefandi did it, is that they had those two sides. They had the flashy Nefandi over here that was misdirecting everybody from these guys who were, and now everybody knows.
Yeah, so do you have like the technocracy in your vampire games? I always find that interesting to see what a Vampire Chronicle, how they handle the technocracy.
Well, there was a big temptation when I was younger to chart out how all the sub-factions for all the splats are interacting time, and that's just wasteful, honestly. I believe the technocracy is out there, but they're concerned with mages, and mages are concerned with the technocracy. Like, if I tell a mage game set in my timeline, it's going to have mage villains, mage characters, and mage priorities. You won't see a Tremere wander over and throw a fireball. You won't see knocking on their doors, unless there's a really, really, really good reason. So I kind of keep the sub-factions of a splat outside the main timeline. Vampire focus. They're out there in my, but they're not contributing anything directly to the active story.
Okay, so and do you have like a main meta plot that you're kind of dealing out with, or is it more kind of compartmentalized where you're having like each kind of thing kind of feeds in and they kind of all create one big story, but there isn't overarching meta plot of the big bad, quote unquote.
Well, we've largely kept the meta plot in the background. Like, we acknowledge that the meta plot events happen and we feature them in our chronicles, but whether or not the players actually crisscross with them is still up for debate per character and per story arc.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, my core storyteller and I sat down with Vampire 5th Edition, reviewed the meta plot changes and the updates. We thought, okay, we like this, we want to keep this. We don't know what to do with this. And we just have that playing out in the background while the players are taking care of their business. So it gives them a sense of still being part of the ongoing story as it appears. And they sit down with other players and say, well, here's what we did with this event. Here's what we were doing while this was happening. You can still have that kind of activity.
Cool. So have you guys converted over to 5th edition all the way?
No, my co-storyteller is a passionate V20 Vampire Revised. I'm willing to give Vampire 5th a shot. There's some stuff I really like about it, like lore sheets. I love lore sheets. But I have yet to run Vampire 5th Edition yet. I would like to, just to say that I've done a lead as a Vampire storyteller, but so far my table is still with Revised /
Yeah, I like what they did with 20th anniversary. I feel like the rule update was really well done on quite a bit of stuff, kind of balancing things out a little bit more. And I always wonder how do you run Celerity? Because I always get kind of confused because I've always been one of the people that when I read Dark Ages, I really liked the idea that it's one blood point per action instead of one blood point in order to do, if you have a celerity of 5, you get 5 actions for one blood point. And I feel like 20th anniversary kind of went in that direction, but I feel like I might be just misinterpreting that.
Well, I think I don't think anybody contests that celerity is the most broken discipline of the game. It's a powered gamer's wet dream. You copy that with spoons and you're going to dice a werewolf. So we've done with the one blood point per multiple actions thing just because it was rules per writ. I like the idea that if you're just kind of idling per se, it just has a passive bonus to your dexterity rolls. That's actually kind of a nice buff.
Mm-hmm.
What I would really like to do is, I really like what Vampire 5th Edition did with celerity, and it gave them actual power hit points that actually consistent with what celerity should be. And if it were up to me, I'd convert celerity whole cloth into that. And the only reason I haven't done that is because I want the players to have a single book that has all the rules referenced that they need.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than say, well, we're using all of this except for this section, which comes from this book and this section.
So what does 5th edition kind of do with celerity? You said that it kind of breaks it up into more, just gives it different kind of powers that you get. You don't get extra actions every turn.
No, the extra actions thing is pretty much gone as far as I can tell. It'd be like you blink over to the other side of a room, the space of a heartbeat, like Louis does. Your celerity is so fast that you can go across this telephone wire before you start to lose balance and fall over. It's stuff that's actually practical application for speed without it just being multiple actions. The fact that they took multiple actions away, I'm perfectly fine with that because it makes it much more balanced. You can't add that onto a combat pool anymore in a practical way. It's something a dice.
Yeah, no, that definitely, I think, brings it back in. The way that I did it to limit it was, I found, or at one time maybe I just misread that too, but at one point I had found something that said it's 1 blood point per turn, and I believe it was out of a Dark Ages book, or per action. So it made it so
I've
that
seen that too, yeah. I've seen that too somewhere. I don't remember what.
And I like that because it doesn't cripple the discipline at all, but it definitely makes it a big blood sucker if you want to be able to take 10 actions. That's 10 blood. That's right. A lot.
More strategic about it.
Yeah.
One of the reasons they probably did the way they did is to try and make it match up with Werewolf and give people a chance werewolves in a fight. But if that's what they had to do to balance it, it was kind of a loss. It balanced everything in vampire at the same time.
Well, I feel like even like werewolves get the shaft on that because let's say if I have a celerity of 5 and the fight goes on for 3 turns, I get 15 actions, for 3 blood. They would have to spend, 15, how many points of rage in order to even equal that is quite a
Two things to
bit.
balance out is number one, everything pisses off a werewolf. If he fails to roll, he gets a rage point. If he takes a wound, he gets a rage point. He's angry the floor is on the floor, he gets a rage.
That is
And the other thing
true.
is, werewolves hit so hard. You add your successes to hit and all that. That's if you're still standing after the werewolf, you already deserve a prize.
Right, yeah. That definitely it does change things up. I mean, to a certain degree when you're talking about that kind of level of power of and you are right that yeah, I think the big balance on that truthfully is that they get rage all the time, whereas a vampire, he's got to actually suck blood.
Yeah, he has to refuel at some point. If that werewolf is smart, he's going to dominate. So my money is still on the werewolf toe-to-toe fight. You can say a Bruja, get a Fenris rune. Yeah, we're not going to see that Bruja from.
Yeah.
But of course, if you're standing toe-to-toe with a werewolf anyway, you've already done damage. You probably deserve to die. Just my point.
Yeah, 100%.
If that werewolf knows he's fighting a vampire,
Since you guys were quiet, I'll just bring up one thing that I wanted to ask about. I read on one of your posts that you don't like Malkavians.
I've had such a headache about Malkavians ever since my earliest nights because the fish milk ones were the only Malkavians I would ever see at the table. I mean, I like Malkavians. I like the potential of Malkavians, the horror and darkness of Malkavians, but nobody ever plays that, or very, very rarely play that. They want to play, Doc Brown from Back to the Future with a melee 5 and water, and it's supposed to be their crazy character. It's also because I've done a lot of security work in like mental facilities and old folks' homes. Actual mental illness is absolutely blood curdling. It is frightening to see what people actually say and do and how convinced they are that they're right. I mean, it shakes me to the bones thinking about some of the people I've run across. They're just terrifying. People think that Steve Martin with an arrow through his head, meet some of these guys. That's the vampire horror that they were going for. The last thing you want to know is that this person's immortal with that kind of power to back up their delusion. So it's kind of like they never really got Malkavians right in the write-ups, and it always kind of impacted how the characters were portrayed. Malkavians quickly became my least favorite. Not because they had no potential, but because nobody wanted to realize it.
Yeah, I definitely see that a lot. They're one of my favorite clans because I do like I like the prophetic aspect of them. I like
prefer prophetic ones, yeah.
I like the idea of what they were in the Dark Ages is much more appealing to me than the modern day. Oh, they're just somebody out of the loony bin and there's no structure to this clan whatsoever. But once you start digging into them, you see that there is a bunch of structure. There is stuff that's going on. There is the madness network at play to a certain degree. And I always liked the idea that they were, a lot of at least the ones that I played were all about prophecies. It was all about, investigating into the occult and knowing about all this crazy shit that's going on. So your madness is, because you are mad, but it might be because you see truth.
And I think that's where they're taking Malkavians these days. Like 5th edition Malkavians are more about being crushed by hyper awareness than having conventional mental illnesses, if I read that correctly. So you still get the same basic effect that they're creepy and they're out there, but you don't have as much incentive to play them, which I think is a big step up.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good change. I really need to take a look into 5th edition. It's been a big glaring hole in my knowledge since it came out, and it's something that I need to sit down and just read that book and see. There's some really good stuff I've been hearing about it.
There's some things in it that kind of make you scratch your head. Like they reduce the number of disciplines that exist and put several disciplines under a single house. For example, back in the old days, a lot of us conjectured that dominate and implementation were basically the same discipline. But they've done that with a lot of disciplines. Protean is now vicissitude and wonder instead of just standard pro. Chemistry is actually a separate discipline. Obfuscate. thing, tree. And it sounds like they're getting carried away with that. 'Cause it's like, I don't even know where Serpentis is anymore. But they're doing a lot of collapsing disciplines into themselves, stuff that seems redundant or just like different branches of the tree from a single school of philosophy.
Mm-hmm. That's
I suppose it
interesting.
makes sense.
I can see where they're coming from. I feel like
Yeah, I see
it
it. I mean,
sounds
like,
like a messing with the base game concepts, of like what a
yeah.
clan was that they had this discipline that made them special or whatever.
I mean, it is logical that vicissitude and protean could be connected. I'll give them that. That's sensible. Dominate and dementation. Yeah, okay, I could see that. But it still scratches you the wrong way because you get used to these clans having specific disciplines that
Hmm.
are their trademark discipline. You didn't need them.
I kind of don't like the idea of vicissitude and protean being similar just because I use a lot of the extra stuff that they throw onto vicissitude to make it a very, depends on like what books that you've read, but I personally, and maybe I'll get a lot of hate for this, but I love the Dirty Secrets of the Black Hand. Um,
That was a controversial one. Yeah, I love it.
very, very controversial book,
There's a lot of discussions about that book. Yeah.
but I love some of the ideas that they had, and one of them, that a lot of people did not like was that, vicissitude was an alien disease.
Yeah, I
And
remember that one. And I didn't know what to make of that either, so I just didn't feature it. But yeah, I know the controversy you're talking.
but yeah, so I always found that to be very interesting aspects of vicissitude, because even in the Sabbat book, they kind of took that out, but they made it they still made it a disease in the Sabbat book, but just
They
kind of
didn't
took
make
out
it a
the
sentence.
alien stuff.
Yeah, which I'm fine with because I did kind of think that was going a little too far overboard for my part. I'm okay with other people enjoying it, but for my game, not what I was.
Yeah, it's always about what you want, I mean, the Dirty Secrets of the Black Hand have basically been kind of retconned as being not correct in a lot of ways.
That's good old classic White Wolf for you back in the '90s, right? Sometimes they made a big wrong turn, but they did it with style.
Right? They always try and they always tried to make a splash, no matter what they were doing.
Yeah, they had a full head of steam back then and had brass balls, and they were kind of swaggering about it. But they did kind of earn it. I mean, they were so big back then. Everybody who wasn't playing D&D was playing Vampire or the White Wolf game, so they kind of earned bragging rights to a point.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I remember hearing a story about how one time it was Wizards of the Coast, I think, or no, it was not Wizards of the Coast. It was TSR at the time came up to White Wolf at one of their booths and was like, "You don't deserve to be here," type stuff. Like you're beneath us, and we just wanted you to know that kind of thing. And and they kind of came out and kind of revolutionized, a lot of aspects of tabletop and LARP that TSR was never gonna be able to get into.
Yeah, White Wolf broke a lot of ground and a lot of it. It was just a strange thing because I grew up as a gamer with D&D in the '80s, and I was the geek that was picked on, and his books were thrown to the ground and all that stuff because I was a D&D geek. And then I became the vampire guy in college, and I was getting dates all over the place. I had an entourage of friends that were following me from class to class. I had a full-blown social life because I was a vampire storyteller. I mean, you couldn't get more worlds apart than that, than how that turned out. It made you a rock star to be a vampire storyteller back then versus the other guy in the corner with his D&D set who's still kind of lonely at lunch. So
Yeah, and I
we kind
think
of had collectively our revenge on that.
Yeah, and I think that one of the big things about that is that Vampire is a very social game. Like you said, most of your games are RPGing. 95% of the game, if not more, is going to be role playing instead of mechanics based. Whereas if you're going to play Dungeons and Dragons, I've definitely gone through entire campaigns of years of playing with people where the role playing is maybe at about 20%, maybe.
Right.
Goofing off is about maybe that's actually 80%, and then there's like 5% role playing, 15% mechanics.
My co-storyteller, I'll say hello to Matt Gibbons and Natasha Gibbons. They're two of my players. And Matt Gibbons likes to say that there's a difference between role-playing ROLL playing and role-playing ROLE playing. And getting lost between the two is how you derail an entire chronicle. And I agree with that completely. So it's a nice, nice bit of philosophy there, compartmentalized and well presented. I was envious I didn't think of it first.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I like that. So I think we're coming up on almost an hour here. There's just wanted to make sure, is there any current things that you're working on that public that you're trying to get out there? Any books that you're kind of writing? I know that you also did a book for A Ghoul's Tale, if you want to kind of tell us a little bit about that, and if there's any other kind of storyteller projects or storyteller vault projects or any other publications or ideas that you're kind of working on.
Well, I have a few books out under my actual name, but I'll focus on the vampire stuff with my pen name, Charles Ashe. Ghoul's Tale is a short story that came about because I wanted to show people just how much it absolutely sucks to be a ghoul. Because we have people who make family members ghouls, who make their friends ghouls when they become vampires. They think that's going to save them from any kind of abuse or grief. It's like, no. If you're a ghoul, you got one of the shortest straws in the world of darkness. God help you. And it's about a toreador who calls herself Lady Dusk, on the conceit that a lot of vampires don't go by their real names anymore because that makes it too easy to track them down, figure out their age, figure out their age. So she has her alias being Lady Dusk, and she's a toreador. She's a vicious toreador. She's cold and she's methodical. And her ghoul is a guy who's absolutely obsessed with her because that's how ghouls work. And how she exploits him and breaks him down and eventually kind of brings him to a turning point in whether he has to choose between her and trying to find a life of his own outside of the enslavement that he increasingly starts to recognize. It's the first in a series of stories about that character. I was supposed to have the next one out by now, but we've all been dealing with COVID and emergency stuff, so I'm only just now warming back up to finishing work on the second story. I plan to do an Avatar book for Mage the Ascension if I can pull that together and kind of put in there my experiments and ideas about how to use an avatar as a more fully fleshed out character rather than just a background on a sheet. I did a one-on-one Mage the Ascension game that lasted for 5 years, once or twice a week for 5 years. And we got really deep into his relationship with his avatar. And we compared notes back then about how we would improve the experience for other players if we were to recommend it. So if I have a chance to pull that together, I would like to. I'd probably stick to fiction on the Storyteller's Vault, do some Mage stories maybe. But that's the stuff that's on my burner at the moment.
Cool. Yeah, awesome. Do you have any shout outs that you want to give out to anybody or anything before we wrap up here?
See. I'd like to give a shout out to Kane for being such a memorable bastard of a dark father, first of all. Matt Gibbons, Natasha Gibbons, Daniel Williams, and Kimmy, who is Natasha's sister, whose last name I don't know of. They're my present table, the Secret Keepers. Getting a big blast out to them. They rock. Good people. Some of the finest gamers I've actually thrown dice with in a long time. I have to give them props for that. Aurora O'Brien, who is one of my best friends and a brilliant, brilliant artist, also breathtaking model. She did the cover of A Ghoul's Tale, and I like to pump her out there anytime I get a chance to kind of throw her out there because she does such amazing commission artwork as well, and she's always looking for a good commission.
Awesome. Yeah.
So my call outs.
Yeah, we'll include some of those links as well, so that people can reach out and check those things out as well. It's always good to promote and show that it's always good to know about good artists out there, to be honest.
Absolutely. It's very, very. And we also have the Grandmaster timeline that I've been talking about through this entire publication. It's available on our Facebook site for our game group. And you can actually review it in detail to see what we've done for the last 27 years. It's available.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll provide definitely a link for that. And I kind of want to go through and check that all out. So I have some time here for sure.
Pretty dense.
And you're pretty active on social media. For us people out here in the World of Darkness community, are there any pages or YouTube channels or anything out there that you think people should be following?
That's a good question. I mean, I'm not really following that many for Vampire right now. I'd really like to get more into World of Darkness podcasts and to actual plays. I can't say that at this moment I can think of anything to advertise yet, which is my failing because I haven't been neck deep in the community for a while. But I'm sure as I find them, I'll post them onto my game page, if nothing else, and give people a point in that direction. Like I'll post to you guys, make sure you guys get some coverage as well, obviously. Others from here, I hope.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show here. I'm just going to give some shout outs here just to wrap some things up. Definitely want to shout out to some of our brethren podcasts out there, like Twin Cities by Night. They got some really awesome actual plays, tons of library of things for you to kind of go back and check out. Midnight Express podcast, which really got me into wanting to do podcasting after I was interviewed on one of his shows. And we've got the Utility Muffin Labs. They have really great podcasts about the World of Darkness and other kind of games. And then World of Darkness World of Dark Ages podcast is also really great if you want to check out about Vampire the Masquerade and just the other Dark Ages lines that are out there. And then Mage the podcast if you want to learn all about Mage the Ascension, and tons of good episodes to check out. All the way from different traditions to most of the books. I think they're almost all the way through on them. And so I hope that if you enjoyed our show, definitely just give us a like or a follow on whatever medium that you're seeing us on. We're on Twitch, we have YouTube, we have Instagram, Twitter. Instagram is just a bunch of my cats. So if you like cats, you can check out Golden Age Stories Instagram.
And don't forget to tune in to our Mage the Ascension game, Technogate, on Monday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time on Twitch at twitch.tv/Golden Age Stories. And remember, that's Gul'dan spelled Guldan.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and wrap that on up here. And
Thank you.
awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on.
My pleasure. Thank you much.